Hey guys, probably wondering why you have this weird video now. Well, funny thing happened is, wow, my face looks really weird in that. All right, we're just gonna stare into the light now. So, I got caught up in jury duty. So I was gone yesterday, but they thought I was so awesome, and clearly this face confirms that they decided to put me on an actual jury. So I'll be on a trial. It's looking like it'll probably be 3 or 4 days before I'm back. And I don't want you guys to get too far behind. So what I've done is created this video to hopefully kind of review a little bit of what you did in class yesterday and give you a little bit of background on what we'll be doing for the rest of the week. These videos are going to be about 15 minutes long. They're just going to be a quick review of what I'm looking for, and then you guys can kind of continue on with what we're working on. The schedule's going to get moved a little bit, obviously, because I'm not here. So plan on bringing your book to class much sooner. I would say bring your novels in on Wednesday to be safe. That way we can kind of move some things around so that you can do stuff that you don't necessarily need me for, and then you can get back to stuff with me once I'm back in business. Please know that I really miss you guys. I really did not want jury duty. We're doing a lot of cool stuff in class, and I really want to be home with you guys here. But that's my civic duty, and I'm a patriot. So take care of that. For today, what I'd love for you guys to do is get back the paper you did yesterday, the vocab piece with the main idea. Just have that out because I'm going to run through one of the examples on the board to show you what I was looking for. That way you can double check your work on that one, correct the other side in case you didn't do that, and then complete today's stuff as well. So give this a try. If you need to, please just have the instructor pause the video, play it back a little bit. That way you can get pieces, but I'll try my best to kind of review everything you see up here because I know the font is not the biggest. For everybody following along, the piece that we're working on is called Dreaming in Cuban. It's the front side of the sheet you guys had yesterday, and I have that piece listed up here for you. So do me a favor and follow along. Hopefully this weird experiment that I'm working on kind of works. So the goal that we had here was to move beyond just gets and don't gets in solving. That is good, but all we're doing that for eventually is to be able to say, hey, I can solve these things I don't understand, put them back into my get chart so that I can then say, well, what's this whole thing about? AKA a main idea. So our goal now is to really take those pieces and pull them into one solid statement that really captures the gist of what's going on. Remember, we're talking about this 80% rule. So we want to say, I get 80% of what's going on and I can talk about that 80%. So if there are little pieces that are still not a part of your main idea, that's okay. We're really looking for what are the big things, who and what are we really talking about that's going to make someone be able to say, yes, this passage is clear enough for me to move ahead and start really analyzing. So today we're going to take a look at this piece and hopefully be able to say by the time we're finished pulling our gets and our don't gets, solving for them and putting them back into play, we can create a main idea that captures what's going on throughout most of this passage. All right? So I've already taken the liberty of writing down my gets for this passage. So I'm going to run through them quickly. This will be maybe a 2-minute thing. I'll try to go slowly so you can kind of check yours and gauge where you're at. But try to have something on your page that's similar to what I have here. And if you don't, try to just follow along with my piece and see where you might have missed some things that you can add in later. So on my get side, my quick ideas that made sense for me. Number one, I said that this woman, Celia, in Spanish we pronounce that Celia, has binoculars. She is wearing a house dress and earrings, and she's sitting in a chair that guards Cuba's coast. The next thing I have down, she is searching the sky and the ocean for enemies, and we'll talk about how I knew that in just a minute. I also know that the sea is really rough from the April rain. She also did not see any traitors while she was apparently looking out. And I know that this woman, Celia, is honored because her neighborhood chose her house to be the lookout. We also know that Celia she could spot another invasion before it happened from her porch, so you could see anything happening before it was going to take place. And at the end, we knew that she would be something at the palace. I'm not really sure what that thing is, and we'll address that in a minute. I knew that she was going to be serenaded by some kind of band, they said a brass orchestra, and that she was going to be seduced by some man on something. Don't know what that thing is, but we're going to take a look at our strategies and see if we can figure out some things that will help us. Now, the big thing I want us to start looking at here is being able to recognize what things we need to solve and what things we can kind of leave to the side. The goal of anything that we're solving is to say that this piece of information that I'm solving for, that I use these wonderful strategies for, is going to help me put back into my get chart so that I can ultimately get to that main idea. So as we're solving, if we're realizing this information is really not pertinent to what I'm really pulling out for the main idea, it might be something I don't need to really focus on, and I can probably move past it, all right? So there goes that moment that you get to skip something. Super fun. So on my don't get, things that were unclear to me, and again, we're still focusing on vocab, so there might be other questions. These are the things that I want us to really place our attention on. I had a couple of words that were struggling to make sense in my mind. Number one, scrutinize. Third line, about middle of the way through. The word scrutinizes, it says that she was searching the night sky and then scrutinizing the ocean. I wasn't quite sure what scrutinizing meant. I have a guess here. I'm going to show you how I got that again in just a minute. Second word, this word on the fourth line, gusano. I'm not really sure what that word is either, but we'll try to figure out what that means and see if it helps us. And third, I have this word down here, fetid. Not really sure how to pronounce that. Maybe that's something that will happen to you. I'm not sure how to pronounce the word. But just because we don't know the pronunciation does not mean that we still can't figure it out. So I'll show you how we got to these pieces right now. So fetid, second to last line, again, right near the middle. Now again, big question we're trying to ask ourselves. The things that I'm trying to solve for, are they helping me figure out my main idea? So before I go any further, what I want us to start doing is being able to say, based on what I have on this get side, what do I understand that I could put down as some kind of main idea statement? So I'm going to use this lovely little column over here to the side to kind of place out my main idea statement and see what things I have that I can put down. You guys have space at the bottom of your page, so I recommend using that if you want to. If you know you're working with pen and you might need to edit, throw it on a separate sheet of paper right now, and once you've got a good idea, you can throw it in that box. So let's talk about big things. Main idea, of course, are what two things? If we're going to have a main idea, what are the two things we always need? Somebody say them for me. Who and what? Great. Thank you, beautiful / handsome student. Who and what? So let's talk about who we're talking about here. Obviously, this passage focuses on my girl, Celia. So I'm going to put down for my main idea statement, I know that this woman, Celia, is doing what? Well, what things do I really care about that seem to matter in this story? Well, they tell me things like she's got binoculars, she's wearing a house dress and earrings, and she's sitting in a chair. Out of all of those things, what are the things that seem to kind of match up with everything else that's going on in this passage? Well, we know overall, this woman seems to be looking for something. So I'm going to talk about generally that. I'm not looking for super deep. I'm not looking to get way down into it. I just want to know the basics of what's happening. So right now, who, Celia, is what? Looking out. For what? Well, according to the sky, according to the passage, what are the things that she's looking out for? Well, from my get chart, because again, our main idea comes straight from our get chart, I can see that I've already said that she's searching for enemies. So in my main idea, I can already drop that in. Looking out for enemies. Again, whole goal here, we're trying to pull together a main idea statement. And that's only coming from the things that we understand in the passage. So we take the things we know, we solve the things we don't know, and all that stuff, again, comes back to make our main idea. So thus far, I've got a pretty simple concept. Our girl Celia is looking out for enemies. Makes enough sense. But there are some ideas here that are still unclear, particularly this piece at the bottom, that seem to matter because they obviously spent time talking about it in this passage. So let's take a minute, solve for the pieces that we hadn't figured out, and see if those things can help contribute to our main idea so that we have a statement that really captures what's going on overall in this piece. All right, first piece, scrutinizes. Looking at the third line, talking about our strategies, we know first thing I want to do is look at the word. What do I know about this word itself? So I'm going to hop over here and talk about this word. Well, it tells me that she searches the night skies and then scrutinizes the ocean. So first thing I can tell is that this word is what part of speech? Excellent. It is a verb. If you didn't say verb, I was going to tell you to choose yourself, but that would be me. So this word is a verb, so we know it's some kind of action, so it's something she's doing to the ocean, all right? So I've written down that it's a verb, some kind of action. Well, what else do I know? I don't see any prefixes or suffixes that might help me out here because you talked about those a lot, and those are often what help us. But what else can I do then if I haven't got anything else to look at in the word itself? Well, we know once we're done with the word itself, we need to go everywhere else. Let's start looking around it. We know this thing is happening to the ocean. But what else do I see happening? Let's look at what's going on in the same sentence, because typically logic tells us the things that are in the same sentence are in some way related. So she is searching the night sky That makes sense. For adversaries, adversary being an enemy. And then scrutinizing the ocean. Well, if we've talked about the idea that overall, our main idea tells us that she is looking out for enemies, it seems that whatever she's doing must be related to that point. Searching the night sky for those enemies, and then doing something in the ocean, perhaps for those same enemies. In my mind, that makes sense. So it seems to me that if she's searching in the night sky for adversaries, and then she's doing something in the ocean, well, if the enemies aren't in the sky, maybe they're coming from the ocean. So scrutinizing might also mean the same sort of action that she's already been doing. So I'm going to take a best guess here. We're going to sort of replace the word based on context and say, because of the fact that we already got the same action going on in the sentence, it's likely something related to that same concept. So scrutinizes, probably along the lines of some sort of search. Again, I don't know that this is the exact answer, but I'm 80% sure that this makes enough sense in the story. Try it out. She searches the night sky for adversaries, then searches the ocean. Makes sense to me. So we're going to take that and put it into our gets. Now, I already put that one in because I want to show you that in your head, a lot of these processes are pretty quick. These are the ones that you're already used to doing. So don't think that everything's got to be a 5-10 minute process. But if you do need the time, slow down, take it, and make sure that you've got a clear point. That one was a quick one, so I already put it into my get column. So I already have she searches the sky and the ocean for enemies. But moving forward, if you need the space, use it. Otherwise, I trust you to knock it out. So we got one piece down. Does that tell me anything new, though? Not really. If we add it to our get column, it's lined up directly with our main idea. So it helped out to confirm what we already knew, but it seems like we're still missing some other things, perhaps down here, that might help me out a little bit more. Let's take a look at this next one. No sign of gusano traders. Well, one, gusano doesn't even sound like an English word to me. If I use my great inferencing skills, and we know we're talking about a woman named Celia, we know she's in what location? Cuba, good job. We can guess that this word probably has what kind of origin in terms of language? Spanish. Great. So, in my mind, this new Spanish word is being used for what purpose? Well, again, let's look at what the word is doing. I automatically see that it is in front of the word traders, so it's describing the traders, which would make it an adjective. So what they're telling me is that this must mean some kind of type of trader. Okay. What does that do for me? Take a minute and think about that question. What does this now do for me? Does this information get me any closer to my main idea? Now talk to somebody else about it. Does this information help me out? What is this doing to get me closer to my main idea? And if it's not, where should we then go? So take a minute, think about that, talk to somebody around you. How do we figure this out? That's the Jeopardy theme song, y'all. All right, come back together in a couple seconds. All right, hopefully you talked about the fact that we're looking at this idea of some kind of trader. We know that Celia was looking out for enemies, so traders and enemies seem to be pretty connected in this passage. It tells us that there was no sign of these traders. So this information seems to be really, really valid and a really good part that I should add to both my get chart and my main idea. So if we were looking for enemies, this next thing confirms what for us? The fact that they did not find them. There was no sign of these traders. So what I want to do is go ahead and add that to my main idea statement. Again, we can spend plenty of time if we need to creating a main idea statement that has 4 and 5 separate additions. That's totally okay. What you want at the end is a complete statement that captures everything. If it's got 4 and 5 sections, absolutely. As long as those things are covering what at least 80% of this passage is about. So I'm going to drop in and say Celia is looking out for enemies, and according to our passage, does not see any. Does not see any. Cool. So notice how helping ourselves solve for things that we don't understand totally adds to our full idea. That's the whole process. That's the goal of what we spend all our time doing. So as you're working with these vocab words, ask yourself, what is it giving me that's going to point me back to that main idea? So we've got one last piece that we're going to take a look at. This last piece, let's see what we can figure out and try to ask ourselves what's going on. Now, I'm a little bit stuck here, gotta be honest. I have no clue what this word means. I've never even seen it before. So what happens? If I'm not able to look at the word itself, I'm gonna focus on the things around it. So let's start building context. We told ourselves last time we were all together that context is what gives us meaning. So we're gonna use the things around it to help us clarify what this thing could possibly be. So let's get ourselves in the right mindset. We know, first of all, backing up, back it up, ow. From her porch, so Celia is on her porch, she could have spotted this invasion before it happened, clearly a part of my get statements. And then it says that she would be something at the palace. ED, I know that suffix tells me probably some kind of action, so this is something that's being done, and we know it would be done at a palace. So what could that be? Well, my mind's going 80 different directions. Maybe somebody's curtsying at a palace. Maybe somebody is, I don't know, serving her because it's a palace and rich people kind of just have that thing happening. Maybe there's somebody performing at the palace because if you got that kind of money, why would you not say, hey, Beyonce, give me a concert? So I don't have enough to move forward with that yet. So let's figure out what else I've got. Let's keep moving. Well, in addition to this thing that's happening at the palace, because again, we've already said that this is some kind of action, they're being serenaded by an orchestra. Okay, so Celia's having something happen in the palace. She's being serenaded by an orchestra and being seduced by el líder, translate that, the leader, himself on a red velvet something. Well, I don't know what that is either. Okay. Well, what I want to start asking myself is, what are the things that are going to make this make sense for me? We know that they're a part of a series in this sentence, so maybe these things are sort of joined together. So something happens to her at a palace. She's being serenaded by an orchestra, and she's being seduced by some man. Orchestras, seduction, something at a palace. In my mind, what is going on here? I want to paint a picture for myself and see what could possibly be happening. So take a minute, talk with somebody around you, and ask yourself, if I already know that something's happening to Celia at a palace, she's also being serenaded by this brass orchestra, and then she's being seduced by some man, what could possibly be happening at the palace? What could this then be related to? Take 30 seconds, talk to somebody around you, get a good idea together, and let's talk about some answers we could have here. Make sure you're talking to somebody. Thank you. Come back together in 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, so let's talk about what we came up with here. Now, you might have had 45 different concepts of what was going on here. Again, we said we're at this palace, there's a band, some guy is seducing her, like, it's a lot going on here, and maybe some stuff that's a little bit too grown for y'all. But what we can establish is a general concept, and that's what I want you guys to remember here. When we're talking about these vocab words and possible definitions, we do not need to be directly onto the first thing that we know. It's got to be 100% right. What we want to focus on here is saying this idea is really fuzzy, it's pretty broad, but I know it's in the right area. So imagine this giant target. If you're not right in the very, very center, that's okay. If you're like, hey, I landed on this bad boy, again, that's what we're going for. So let's talk in general terms about what this thing could be. If I'm thinking about what's going on for Celia at a palace, being serenaded and being seduced by some kind of man, I know this thing, this scene that I'm seeing in my head, pretty darn fancy. That's what's coming up in my mind. This thing is really high class. It's a pretty quality affair right now. I'm not thinking like gutter butts on the corner asking for a cheesesteak. I'm thinking like, hey, you need to be dressed up. Things seem to be pretty like serious here. You better be about your money on this one. So I don't know what this thing was, but if I think of a verb that would match that level of fanciness and super hoity-toity stuff, what would I put in here? Again, I'm stuck. I don't have anything super specific. So let me think something that could possibly happen that would make this make enough sense to me to move forward. Well, what would happen to her at the palace where she would be serenaded and seduced by this man? For me, if somebody's trying to take me to a palace, serenade me with a band, and seduce me, you probably gotta be treating me pretty well. So I'm gonna plug that in for now and see if it gives me enough to work with. So let's say we replace this with treated well. She would be treated well at the palace, serenaded by a brass orchestra, seduced by a leader himself. I like it. It works enough for me. So we're going to put that guess in, replace my blanks in my get column, and keep moving forward. Now, I said I was stuck on one last thing, and this one's going to be pretty quick because I trust you guys' inferential skills, but I want to address it quickly just in case we might have caught it. Serenaded by this brass orchestra, seduced on a red velvet something. In your mind, you're already replacing. I know how you guys think. So you're already saying, well, it's made out of velvet. We know what velvet is. It's that little stuff kind of like velour and little tracksuits them girls used to wear back in the day. We know that this guy was seducing Celia on this thing. Well, if I'm trying to seduce my wife, Gabrielle Union, obviously, and I got some red velvet around, my best bet, I'm doing it on some kind of like furniture. If I'm going to get real specific with it, I would say like a couch or a bed. I don't know anything else you're thinking right now, so we're going to just stop right there, and we're going to say on some kind of couch or a bed. So now let's talk about the last little bit. We're almost done. Thank you for hanging on with me for this piece. I know this is a lot, but I wanted to give you as much to work with as possible. That way, for the next couple of days, if you need to run back through this again, you have a good, solid example to work from. I have some things that I've put back into my get column because I saw for them using the context in my passage. So now I want to see, do these things help add something to my main idea? Because right now, all I've got is that Celia is looking out for enemies. She doesn't see any. Well, they tell me down at the bottom that she gets this like super great treatment. So how do those two ideas connect? She's looking out for enemies, obviously trying to protect somebody. She doesn't see any, and then she gets this like really good stuff. Well, in my mind, it seems like this is probably some kind of reward, some kind of gift. So what could I say in my main idea that is supported in my passage to make sure that I've got a solid concept here? Remember, we're not going off of guesses and saying, well, it's probably this, it might be that. So do I have enough to say she's definitely getting treated? Honestly, not really. So at this point, this information is important, but I don't want to jump in and say exactly what it is if I don't know for sure. So I'm going to stop this part of my main idea by just saying these things. Celia's looking out for enemies. She doesn't see any right now. And then I can just add on a whole nother piece, maybe by throwing a semicolon in because I want to separate ideas, and say, and then Celia gets treated very well at the palace. How do I know she's getting treated well? Because she's got a band, she's got a bae. Man, she's got a pretty good life right now. I'm sitting at jury duty at this point, so sucks for me. Point for her. All right, so that is the process. Take a look at the main idea statement. I'll read it out for you in case it's difficult to see. Our main idea, things we know for sure. Celia is looking out for enemies. She does not see any right now. And then she's also getting treated pretty well at a palace. That's enough. That's all you need. You are reflecting the majority of what's happening in this passage by giving me this information. And I can also see how you got that because you clearly laid out your gets. So I want to shout out a couple people that I saw from last week's work that really did this well. Unique, incredible work. Her gets were laid out so clearly. And I could tell from her solving that she added pieces back in. So when I looked at her don't get, she said, this word didn't make sense, but I tried to solve for it, and I could see that information reflected back in her passage announcement.
Claire Rex, contact the front desk. Claire Rex, contact the front desk.
It's like 6 o'clock right now, just so we're clear. So tell your little brothers and sisters to go home, because it's weird if they're at school as late as I am. Anyway, I'm really proud of her for that one, because I could then see that work in her solving reflected in her gets. When she has these gets really solidly laid out, that's going to let her and going to let you make these really solid main idea statements. So moving forward, what I really want to see from you guys is your ability to, 1, solidly make some gets, 2, identify what you don't get, 3, solve for what you don't get, 4, a lot of numbers here, put those things back into your gets, and 5, use those things to make a complete main idea statement. Those are the things that you're going to be assessed on when I come back and we have this quiz finally on vocab. So I want you to start getting into the habit of being able to say, here's what's generally happening based on what I've been able to figure out. Again, notice the number of things that we really did not address in our final statement. We didn't talk about her wearing binoculars. We didn't talk about her sitting in this chair, but we got to the things that really mattered. She is a lookout. She's looking out for enemies. She doesn't find them. And she's also got a bae who's treating her quite well right now. So we figured out the things that really matter. That's what we're going for. When you can do this kind of stuff consistently, that means that you're then ready to really go into that analysis, and that's going to be our next step. So if you have questions, please, please, please write them down. Go home tonight, send them to me on Edmodo. I will be checking my Edmodo as soon as I get in from jury duty. So if you have questions, feel free to send them there. You can email them to me at my work email, sterling.grimes@masterycharter.org. Same for every staff member on the planet. So I will happily address any questions you have about this piece. But for your work, what I would love for you to do, 2 things. Number 1, take a look at the other side of the work from yesterday. So you guys worked on the Dreaming in Cuban piece, and the second one was on Liberty. If you did not get to complete this, perfect. Now's your time to do that. So run through that whole piece. I want to see the gets, the don't gets, the solving, replacing in your gets, and the main idea. That is the big money right there. The big cheese, that's where we're going. Good. So do your best to please, please, please create a solid main idea, walking through the same steps that we did up here. After that's done, go ahead and take a look at the new passages that you got today. These pieces are being collected up as well. But I know since this is new and we took a good half an hour on this, this is going to be something that you might not have already gotten to all day. So this piece that you got today in class will be due tomorrow. Please turn that in to your instructor so that they can collect that piece so I can take a look at them to see how we're doing. But again, you have time to work on it in class today and homework to make sure that I've got it tomorrow. Again, send me any questions you have. Some of you have my number. Feel free to text me. Please don't send me random inappropriate things. That's not cool right now because, I'm in court and they see stuff. So just let me know if you have any questions. I will be back as soon as I possibly can. I love you guys. I miss you guys. John loves you guys. Hey, John. Say hi to John. He's here. He's been watching over us the whole time. You see how me and John, see? That's friendship right there. That's love, baby. That's love. Can't nobody come between that. That's my bull since day 1. So, again, let me know if you have any questions. Help each other out. Write stuff down if you need to. Take your time. Take your time. Take it slow. Take it slow. Take it slow. And I'll see you as soon as I can. All right, guys. Be good. Love you. How do you stop this thing?